Dillon raised his hands and took a step back. "Take it easy. Like I said, if you'll come in the house, I can take care of this. But first put down the gun. There's no call for any gunplay." This was not her first rodeo, Tessa Winters thought as she took in the cowboy. She'd come all this way on a hunch that Ethan might have gone to Montana, but she'd still been shocked when she'd actually tracked down the lying bastard. "You won't be charming your way out of this." He shook his head. "Not my intention. If you put away the gun, I'm sure we can resolve this." She eyed him warily, torn between her anger and his apparent calm. There was a time when she would have weakened. That time had long since passed. Her gaze narrowed as she realized that he must have come straight here after he'd run out on her. His big hands were calloused, and his skin was tanned, as if the man had actually been doing some honest physical labor. Looking at him now, she couldn't help but think about the first time she'd seen him. With his tousled, sandy blonde hair and big blue eyes, he'd been the most handsome cowboy she'd ever run across. Like now, he'd been wearing a western shirt that accentuated his broad shoulders and slim hips, and jeans that... Tessa shook off those dangerous thoughts and reminded herself what was at stake here. He might look good. The physical Montana lifestyle had made him even more attractive, but under the facade was a liar, a coward, and a thief. "Please," he motioned to the gun. "You're making me nervous." "You should be nervous." But she lowered the gun. "Okay," he said, slowly putting down his hands. "Let me see to my horse, and then we'll go up to the house and take care of this." He climbed the corral fence and approached the wary filly slowly. Tessa could hear him talking softly to the horse as he removed the halter rope, then stroked the filly's neck. Her ire rose as she saw how gentle and loving he was to the horse. It hurt even more to think of how easily he had abandoned her and their child. When he finished with the horse, he climbed back over the fence and motioned toward the house. She followed. Distrustful as to what he was up to, she kept her fingers around the grip of the .45 in her bag. He thought he knew her, but he had no idea who he was dealing with. Pregnancy had changed her in more ways than one. Tessa felt like a loose cannon, and knew a large part of it was the hormones her doctor had warned her about. Given the way she was feeling, it surprised her that more pregnant women didn't kill the men in their lives. Truthfully, she was so angry with Ethan that she didn't know what she would do. She'd spent 6 months telling herself to let it go, forget about him and the way he'd conned her. Finally, she'd given up kidding herself. She had to look him in the eye one more time before she could let it go. Probably bringing the gun hadn't been her best choice, though, but she wanted him to know that she was dead serious. The cowboy mounted the steps of the house and pushed open the door, holding it for her. Now he was going to act like a gentleman. She gave him a withering look as she entered. Behind her, she heard him step in and close the door. "How about we discuss this over a cup of coffee?" he asked, but didn't wait for an answer as he moved past her. She sighed, wondering how long he thought he could stall before she lost her temper. Since becoming pregnant, she'd found herself on a roller coaster ride shifting between tears and anger, which had left her exhausted. But she was nonetheless determined. It was bad enough Ethan had seduced her with his lies, knocked her up, and then taken off on her. Stealing her money, though? That had been the last straw. Tessa looked around the old farmhouse, surprised to see how neat and clean it was, as she told herself that once she'd settled things with Ethan, she would get back to being calm, confident, and in control of her normal self again. At least she hoped so. "Who cleans your house?" she asked suspiciously as she stepped toward the kitchen doorway. "I do," he said over his shoulder. She watched him set about making a fresh pot of coffee. When had he learned to make coffee? Or maybe he'd known all along and, like everything else, had played her. Just when she thought he couldn't make her any angrier. Looking away to keep from pulling the pistol and shooting him, she was shocked that the kitchen was as clean and uncluttered as the rest of the house. This was not the Ethan Lawson she knew. Until that moment, she hadn't considered that the reason he'd left her...